I am delighted now to move to Asia and to introduce Ashley Mickelwright, who is the CEO of Bluebell, another family company who is curating the brands in the omni-channel manner in Asia. So Ashley, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Which one do I press?
This one. F sign. I think we should start with the video, right,
Okay.
of Bluebell.
I'll go once.
Retail is constantly changing. So what remains constant at Bluebell? We understand the evolving needs and desires of the Asian consumer. Since 1954, they have trusted us to be their brand curator, and we draw upon our enduring passion for all things luxurious, inspiring, and beautiful. No one understands the Asian consumer.
Whoops. No problem.
Retail is constantly changing. So what remains constant at Bluebell? We understand the evolving needs and desires of the Asian consumer. Quite like Bluebell. We know the way to their heart is not just to communicate, but to connect. We meet them when and where they choose, on the digital platforms that delight them, through brick-and-mortar experiences that surprise them. 60 years, 600 stores, 3,000 employees. We are the only partner covering the whole of Asia, and we endeavor to deliver the highest quality of service. Bluebell stands for an assembler of expertise, multicultural, multi-channel, multidisciplinary, multi-model. For every brand partner, we design a unique, curated path. A journey that evolves with their needs as they grow. As a family group, we are alliance-oriented in our approach. And whether brand partner or business partner, we share a common goal. To continuously imagine new, creative ways to engage with the Asian consumer. Bluebell is a mark of trust, a seal of approval. We select, we adapt, we connect, we accelerate, you thrive. This is how we offer Asian consumers authentic experiences of the world's most distinctive brands. This is how we curate brands.
Next one. Okay, good morning, and thank you, INSEAD, for inviting me for this presentation. The good news is that this is the last presentation before coffee, so just persevere with me, and I promise to keep it to 20 minutes. What I want to talk to you today about is the way that the distributor role in Asia has been transforming itself due to the latest market realities that are going on. This is a schedule that you should be fairly well aware of. Not quite the same figures as Chalhoub. We have 307 billion turnover. But what is fascinating is that the Asia market is 91 billion, which is 24% of the total market. 10 to 15 years ago, as we heard earlier, it was Japan that was really driving the Asia market. It was 50% of the total of the region, excluding China. And today, it's still 50% of the Asia market, excluding China. But what nobody anticipated was just how much the Chinese market was going to grow over the last 10 years. And when you take into account the fact that you've got the Chinese traveling overseas, the actual amount of the business driven by Asia is 54%. On top of that, in Korea, we have the largest travel retail market in the world. 15 years ago, I would say that Asia was nice to have. Now it's a situation where the brands have to look at Asia and build it into their strategy right from day one. The other thing that we're noticing is that within the next 10 years, we expect that the millennials, that's the people that reach the age of 18 after the year 2000, and Generation Z, which are the people that have grown up with the internet, we expect this to control 45% of the market. Of this, half of them are going to be Asian. So not only have we got a big influence from the Asians, we've also noticing that the age of the Asian the consumer is going to fall. And the biggest difference between these consumers and the consumers that we've seen in the past has been their connectivity. And what we're seeing is the connectivity of the Asian consumer, particularly in China, is far exceeding any other region in the world. Already, 30% of all our sales, Asian sales, are in some way inspired by online activity. And the millennials and the Generation Z, these people are spending over 2 hours a day on social media. So the question is, what are the new realities of Asia? How has it changed in the last 10 years? Everybody knows about digital disruption, connectivity, and how it has affected transparency. But how has it actually affected us? Customers have got access to any data they want on current brands, upon the competition, as well as brands that are still to come, all at their fingertips. And this has been probably the single biggest reason why the Chinese consumer has become informed and is able to have confidence in only 5 to 10 years, when other countries took a generation to really understand the luxury market. The other thing that has been a big change was when I first started at Bluebell, which 20-odd years ago, we were able to control the marketing through the print. We were able to do shop events. We were able to do the celebrity endorsements. And we were able to sort of push products onto what we wanted the customer to buy. What we're finding now, that push model has completely shifted over to the consumer, and it's now becoming a pull model. What that means is that in the past, where we may have communicated with our friends over dinner or in a bar, what we're now able to do is connect with our friends at the touch of our fingerprint and talk to 10 people, which then can 10 other people, so that now the customer engagement is much, much quicker. And the other thing that's had a major impact, of course, is the ability to buy online. And this has created transparency on pricing. When the industry first evolved, the reason why there was a price difference between Asia and Europe was all to do with the cost of distribution. But then what happened, the insatiable appetite for luxury, we were able to charge higher prices. And as we were charging higher prices, the landlords started to see how much money we were making, and so they started to put up the rents. And in the end, the price positioning, these higher price positionings, became self-evolving. So in effect, up until about 5 years ago, Japan, the price differential would be something like 30% versus Europe. Even Hong Kong could be as much as 15% versus Europe. And people don't understand that anymore. If you have a consumer that walks into one of our shops in Hong Kong or in Japan and says, hey, why are you charging 3,000 euro when in Europe I can get it or I can buy it online for 2,500 euro, it's very difficult to explain why there's that disparity. What's even more disturbing, of course, is that the partner who is selling offline in Asia is not necessarily the partner that is selling online in Asia. So you can even get a situation, which has happened to us, where a customer can buy online, but bring the product to our shop and ask for it to be replaced because it's damaged. The consumer doesn't understand that we're a distributor and that the online partner is a completely different person. They just understand that it's the brand. On the market side, what happened with this huge growth in the Asia market is a lot of people started to move into the space that we were in. You had landlords starting to buy distribution companies. You had these large conglomerates. Not only were they representing the most successful brands in the world, but they were also starting to represent smaller up-and-coming brands. On top of that, you've got marketplaces coming into each country. There's 2 or 3 in each country in Asia. And then you've got these pure digital players that are moving into bricks and mortar. And on top of that, you've got the private equity giving small up-and-coming brands enough money to think that they can do it on their own. So faced with these challenges, we had to think, what was the way that we needed to transform our business? And the first thing we did is we started to, we know everybody was saying that the role of the distributor was under threat 10 years ago, and that there was a very good chance that the distribution role would just disappear. But this isn't what's happening. What's happening is that because there are so many different differences between the Japanese and the Koreans, difference between the Chinese and the Koreans, in fact, even differences between the mainland Chinese, the Taiwanese Chinese, and the Hong Kong Chinese, you need to have this local knowledge. So what we were noticing was not that the role was changing, but that the business model was changing. Instead of thinking about buying and selling, we had to start thinking about the consumer. And what we were doing is we were going to the brands and saying, look, the way to approach these markets is to say, how many stores do you think you can have? How many department stores can you be in? How many select stores can you be in? And what's your travel retail distribution? And also, what are you going to do online? Let's think about what is the way we can maximize the sales. This is not about you trying to make money out of selling products to us. It's about maximizing the sales and then sharing those revenues. So what we did is we came up with a completely different business model, which basically made all the emphasis on us to maximize the sales, whether it goes through the digital channels or it goes through the normal bricks and mortar channels. The other thing that we did was when you start talking with digital brands, we needed to rethink how to work with them. So what we were doing there is we were coming up with a plan as to how to introduce the brands into these markets. We were calculating how much money was necessary to do this, but instead of building this within our P&L, we were buying a minority interest, sometimes at crazy valuations, of the holding company. And then that holding company was letting the money flow through to Asia. And what that meant was that if we were successful building value in Asia, we would build value in the mother company, and then we could share in the value there. Again, it's moving away from this buying and selling and talking more about revenue share. Whoops. A big change has been not so much about data, but about your customer data, because this used to be our biggest asset. This used to be the thing that gave us the edge when we went to see a brand, because we knew all the Asian consumers. But now we can't stop that, because there's so much communication between the brands and the direct consumer that we decided, actually, we have to embrace this. There's no point trying to fight it. So what we're doing instead is we're looking at better ways to collect our CRM database, looking at better ways to analyze it and to leverage it, not just to improve our performance with the customer, but also to give the brand far more information so that they can also speak direct to the customer. They still need our help anyway, because they need to be translated into the local language, but also actually how you speak to the consumer in Japan and how you speak to the consumer in China is completely different. So you can't copy-paste it the way that you do it here into Asia. Even within Asia, you have huge disparities. For instance, the Chinese are very keen to give you their data. They actually don't mind giving it to you. Of course, what they expect in return is a mammoth expectations in terms of customer service. But the Japanese, you can't get their telephone numbers. You cannot get their line, which is WhatsApp, because it's a completely different culture. Another change on what we've done is we've started using social listening tools. And what we're doing here is trying to monitor just how much success a brand's international communication is working. But on top of that, we're able to also see how successful our own local initiatives are working. But what's particularly interesting for us is that you can actually see brands that actually haven't even come to Asia yet, and to see which ones these Chinese consumers, the Japanese consumers, are looking at already online. Let's forget what does that mean? Is that finished? Oh, God, okay, let's go very quickly. Okay, so we did a much lighter model where we now test the millennial products. What we do is that we push them into a wholesale, or we put them into marketplaces, and then if we see traction, we very quickly open retail stores. So this has changed from the previous model where we used to open retail stores and hope that it would work. Here we bought a retail news platform which has a completely independent editorial line, but it gives a credible source of knowledge, which again we share with our brands. And the last thing that I'm going to show you about is becoming very important for us, and this is about training your staff. We invested in a company which is called LBI, which is a training school in Korea and now has offices in China. But behind that, we're putting our own retail academy and having specific plans to really give our staff as much training as possible, because, of course, you're getting huge demands in terms of quality of service. So coming to the last thing. It's not going now. There we go. So I'll finish on this slide. We now don't see ourselves as a distributor. We don't see ourselves buying and selling product. That D word is too associated to a dinosaur to want to be associated as a distributor. So now we start to see ourselves as an accelerator, which means that if you come to Asia, our job is to get you into the stores and to get you onto the marketplaces quicker than you can do it yourselves. And we estimate that if a brand comes to Asia, it can take up to 2 years to be established. But if you come through us, we can get you to market within 6 months. And then on top of that, we have to curate each brand for each specific situation. Because as I said, the markets are different, but the brands are different, and the consumers are different. I'm going to stop there because... Okay.
Many thanks, Ashley. Thank you very much.